My name is Helen Evans, and I'm going to read my memoir about Coastline. My girlfriend Pat and I were on the last leg of our summer trip. We travelled on my Lambretta scooter from Edinburgh to Newcastle, by ferry from Newcastle to Bergen, across Norway by train to Oslo, and then from Oslo to my friend's family farm north of Stockholm. We helped with the harvest and had a lovely visit. After leaving the farm, we headed west across Sweden to catch the ferry from Helsingborg to Elsinore, north of Copenhagen. After a few days sightseeing, we made our way to Esbjerg to get the ferry to Newcastle. I was dismayed to see this ferry was much smaller than any I'd ever been on. It didn't look much bigger than a large tugboat. We stowed the scooter on the car deck and made our way up the narrow steps to our cabin, tightly packed with 4 bunks, dumped our small bags, and headed for the deck. We looked at the harbour and the surrounding coastline with a tinge of sadness. It was unlikely we'd ever see it again. Just before the ferry exited the harbour, there was an announcement on the loudspeaker. "This is your captain speaking. I regret to inform you that we are heading into a storm, and I advise all passengers to remain seated in the passenger lounge or to go immediately to their cabins." We exited the harbour, and immediately the ferry cavorted out into the North Sea like a horse that had just been stung by a bee, leaping up and down, then from side to side, never stopping moving. It surely was going to be a rough crossing. Pat and I retreated into the passenger lounge cum dining room. It wasn't long before passengers, including my friend Pat, started heading to their cabins in the bowels of the vessel until only 2 of us remained, myself and an elderly pink-cheeked, white-haired, bearded man. He approached my table, introduced himself before sitting down. He said he was a retired ship's master. When his wife died, he found himself alone, bored, and lonely in a large house. So he rented his house, packed a small bag, and for the last 3 years had been hopping from ship to ship, having a great time. But now he was heading home to attend his brother's funeral. He was a great storyteller, and the time passed quickly. We were interrupted only once by a young, green-faced steward who brought us our dinner. How he managed to balance the plates and place them on the raised-edged table was a miracle. He made a hasty retreat, never to return. We ate our meal and continued our conversation before taking time out for a nap. By the time I awoke, the storm had abated, and one by one the passengers returned to the lounge, just as we were approaching Newcastle. I'm sure they were glad to see the coastline, rather ugly though it was, and the prospect of terra firma. Of all the coastlines we had seen on our trip, the most beautiful was that around Bergen. I would remember it as I would the old sailor who had made a stormy voyage so memorable. Never at that time did I ever imagine that in 2 years my life would be changed forever when I came to Powell River. Now I no longer have to go to foreign parts to see coastlines. I only need to look out of my window to see the most beautiful coastlines and sunsets in the world.